All right, so this week we're going to continue on, like I said, in our series, Help for Daily Life, out of Proverbs. And we're just going to work our way through the book of Proverbs all year long. And some of you know this summer I'll be gone for several weeks as my family is going to go back to the U.S. to visit for the first time since before COVID. And going to be gone about 7 or 8 weeks, actually. And we're taking a long vacation this time and a long holiday. And we have a couple of guest speakers coming in. Shane, you remember Shane, about a month ago, preached a sermon one Sunday. Shane's going to come in for about 3 weeks, and Lovely's going to come in also for about 4 weeks as well. And both of them want to continue on in Proverbs, so they're going to give you, take a chapter or so a week and move through it as well. So we're going to be doing this probably until about October, November. Knowing me, like today, I planned 1 week for Proverbs 6, but it turned out to be 2 weeks. So we're going to do this after Mother's Day. But we said that Proverbs is all about having help for daily life. Things that we can use, things that we can apply into our life to help us to live that full and abundant life that Jesus said he has come to give us. And even if you're not a believer, there are things that you can pull out of Proverbs that you can find that will help your life. My first couple of years here, I knew a person and knew a woman. And I went and visited her house one day, and her father was there. And I'd met her father before, and I knew her father was actually a Taoist priest. And I thought it was fun, remarkable, because I never thought about it this before, because I'm kind of naive on things. But he had gone to South Africa on mission trips to share his religion and his faith. But what I found remarkable that day when I went there is I walked into their house. He had a hardware store type of thing too, and he's sitting at his desk, and I went to say hello to him, and I looked, and he was reading the Bible. And I didn't know for sure. I was kind of questioning it. I said, are you reading the Bible? And he's like, yeah, I'm reading the Bible. And I asked him, and this is through an interpreter. It was actually through her. I was like, well, I thought you were Taoist. Why are you reading the Bible? He said, the Bible has all kinds of good principles for living life. He said, if we would just follow the principles here, the world would be a much better place. So he said, I read it to find out how to live my life, how to share that with other people as well. And see, here's the thing about Proverbs. Proverbs is full. It is one of the favorite books for me to read through because there's no hidden messages in it. It's just in your face. Solomon says, here, my son, he addresses it to his son, but it's to all of us. Addresses it to us, say, here, these things are important to you. But like Solomon, oftentimes we read it, but we don't follow it. And why do I say that? Well, this chapter 5, 6, 7 that we're going to be looking at in the next couple of weeks too. There's the rest of 6 and 7. Chapter 5 that Shane did before, back at the end of March. They all talk about avoiding immorality, about chasing the wayward woman, about not chasing wisdom. And Solomon in his life, even though he was known to be one of the wisest men alive, he got away from all that toward the end. And it's pretty sad. He didn't even follow his own advice. So as we look at the book of Proverbs and we think about it and think about it being help for daily life, it's important that we read it, it's important we understand it, but it's important we start applying it. Now, this chapter 6, I like this chapter 6 because chapter 6 is Solomon says in 5, he started in about immorality, about, having adultery, different things like that, kind of focused on that. In chapter 6, he's like all of a sudden he throws in some other things, say, hey, avoid these pitfalls in life too. So I started thinking about pitfalls and things, and does anybody remember Atari game systems? Or is it just me because I'm that old? Okay, well, some of us oldest people remember that, Atari game systems, all right? Atari game systems had a game called Pitfall. And you had you were a character. You also had another character named Pitfall Harry, and you went through the thing and you looked for treasures. Okay, and I can barely remember the game because I think Zelda and some of those games were my favorite games. But I barely remembered the game, and but one of the things I thought about it for some strange reason, I looked it up, and I found this pitfall instructions. Now you can't see it very well because it's down there at the bottom of the page, but let me tell you what it says down there at the bottom of the page. Okay, it says this, and here I'll make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay, it says this. Picture this: you're deep in the recesses of a forbidden jungle, an unforgiving place few explorers ever survive. And it seems like our world is becoming a more unforgiving place. And it's harder to survive day by day. And some people say, well, it's been like that for a long, long time. Well, it's true. But we are in a jungle out there. We're in a war zone out there. But you've got courage because you're with Pitfall Harry. Well, we have courage because of who? Of Jesus in our lives. We can have courage. The world-famous jungle explorer and fortune hunter extraordinaire. The lure of hidden treasures draw you and Harry deeper and deeper into the bush. Now, here's the part I like, the last part of this. Here's what it says. But being a great explorer, you wouldn't think of starting such a difficult journey without reading this manual first, very carefully. Actually says that on the box on the outside. And we are on an adventure every day. We're out there in the jungle. There's all kinds of pitfalls. There's all kinds of things out there that can sidetrack us, that distract us. Some of them are obvious. Some of them are hidden. But we have a manual. We have God's word that can help us to get through it. And we need to read it carefully. And we need to think about what it means. I've shared with you my two boys. You know, there's a game on the iPad that is called World of Tanks Blitz. It's the name of the game. And I actually found it for them several years ago because they liked tanks, and so I was like, okay, well, there's probably some kind of tank game, and I found it. And they love that game now, and they're really good at it. You know, I'm ashamed to say this, but they're twice as better as I am on it. And but that's not a shame to say it. They are. They're just really good at it. One of the things that makes them better at it is when they get their 20 minutes of TV time. Both of them will do this, but especially one of them will say, I want to watch this. And there is a blogger, a YouTube guide in Australia that he literally plays, I'm guessing, probably 8 to 10 to 15 hours a day. And he records them. And then he puts his videos up on YouTube, and then he tells you what was happening good or wasn't good. And he's gotten so popular that this is his job now. He makes so much money at it. And people send him his videos, and he'll put it up, and he'll say, you know, well, this person played really well because they did this, and you need to use this technique here, you need to do that. And those two boys look at that, they soak that in, and then next time they play, they go to that particular tank, they play that tank, and they try to do the things he says to do. When we approach Proverbs, we need to do the very same thing. We need to read it carefully and apply it into our lives and apply it into who we are. So, help for daily life. We're going to talk about avoiding pitfalls today in Proverbs chapter 6. There are 6 different pitfalls I'm going to give you, and I'm going to give you a list in a minute. We're going to go through 3 today, and then 2 weeks from now, we're going to go through the other 3. But let's read this first. Proverbs 1:7. Remember this verse we talked about when we first started talking about Proverbs? For the fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. See, Solomon wrote this because he wanted his son to avoid the traps. He wanted his son to avoid the pitfalls. He wanted to share his wisdom with everybody else. We talked about that Solomon was not only wise, but one of the things he did is he shared his wisdom with everyone. He wanted us to have a better life. He wanted us to see a better way to live. So he wrote these things. He compiled some from some other people, and he put them out there for us. But he said, hey, there is a foundation to all this, and that foundation is our relationship with Jesus Christ. Okay? The foundation of true knowledge. True knowledge comes only from God. And so as we talk about things, and as we apply these things, and as we look at these things, then when those of us who are believers, One of the great things about us is we've got the strength, we've got the power, we've got the wisdom of God behind us, helping us to do these things. But as we discovered it earlier on in Proverbs, we have to choose to do this. We have to choose to put it into our lives, okay? Now, one of the things about Proverbs 6, and one of the things that he says in here, and one of the things we'll look at just briefly, is in Solomon's warnings, he said, hey, if you are not careful about these pitfalls, if you're not careful about these distractions, they can enslave you. In other words, they can keep you from doing the things you should do. They can keep you from enjoying the freedom. Remember we talked about freedom 2 weeks ago? The freedom that you have in Christ. So, as we move on, here are the 6 pitfalls that we find in chapter 6, okay? First one, avoid legal entanglements. I'm not going to explain these right now. We'll explain them as we go through them. Second one, avoid laziness. Avoid scoundrels. I like that one, scoundrels. That sounds fun, okay? Avoid what the Lord hates. Avoid disobedience, and avoid immorality. And when we get into avoid immorality, that also carries into chapter 7 as well. And so that's why we'll continue to do that through there as well. So avoiding pitfalls. Avoid legal entanglements, okay? Now, an entanglement, and here's a definition of entanglement. A situation or relationship that you're involved in that is difficult to escape from. Some of you feel entangled about many things in life. You feel entangled to your job. I can't quit my job because of this or this or this. You have a relationship maybe you feel entangled to. Maybe, sometimes you just feel like the responsibilities of life and the things of life have just entangled you and kept you from doing other things you want to do. It's a part of life. It's a part of who we are. And I think there's a sense to me when I read this, there's a sense that, hey, I've got enough other things to deal with. I don't need more to deal with. You understand what I mean? I don't need something else to happen, okay? Sometimes, I'll go through a day and stuff will happen, and sometimes I'm just like, okay, what's next? Kind of, he's like, okay, something else is going to happen. This week, our worship team, the one that was supposed to be here this week, several of them got sick. So we thought, well, probably good to give them a week's rest and let them rest up, let them get well. And so then I say our second team, but it's not, we don't have team 1, 2, 3 here, but our second team, I reached out to them, hey, can you guys lead worship? It was actually Thursday night, or Wednesday or Thursday night, I don't remember, midweek. I think it was Thursday night. I reached out to them and said, hey, can you lead worship? Got a response, yeah, we can do that. We can help out. We can lead worship. And then about an hour and a half later, 2 hours later, I got a message back. I tested positive today, too. Oh, can't do that. I talked with the other person that was going to come in that week, and he wasn't able to come, too, because of health issues and concern with the virus. Just needs to be very, very careful. So it was not a good decision for him to come, and I encouraged him, don't come. So then I reached out to Howard. Howard was playing the piano today. He said, Howard, can you play the piano on Sunday? I don't know what we're going to do. We may not have a worship team. We may have anybody there or anything else, but can you play the piano on Sunday? And he said, sure. He said, what do you want me to do? And I said, I don't know. I'll let you know here in a little bit, okay? And then I sent a message to the worship team line group, and I said, hey, can anybody sing on Sunday? And immediately had a couple volunteers said, yeah, we can do it, and we can sing. Now, here's the thing. When that was all happening, I felt that point. What else can possibly happen? Sometimes we're entangled with so much in life that we feel that way. So when we start talking about these pitfalls, when we talk about this pitfall and the other pitfalls, what these do is they don't take away from some of those other things that we have to deal with on a normal basis, but they keep things from being added on top of that. Okay? You want to have a good marriage relationship? Then apply Proverbs 5, 6, and 7. Don't have an adulterous relationship. Treat your husband and wife well. Do those type of things. You want to have freedom to be able to give. We got the Stefan's school supplies project coming up, and you want to feel free to give that to that. Well, then don't get yourself in debt. Don't get yourself in a place where you can't freely use the resources that God has given you. And that's what this first one is about. Avoid legal entanglements, things that can keep you from doing the things you want to do, things that are difficult to escape from. Now, he uses a couple of things. Look at this. My child. Now, I changed if to a different color. If. If is an important thing here. If. If is insinuating. If is implying that, hey, you should not do this. But if you do. He's saying, don't put yourself for security for a friend's debt or agree to be the debt guarantor of a debt for a stranger. He's saying, hey, these things can cause you problems. This can be a possible pitfall. Now, some of you would say, but as believers, as Christians, shouldn't we help others out around us? Yes, you should help people out. But don't offer it as a guarantee to debt. If a person needs help, give them. Give to them. That's the example we saw in the New Testament times. But we're going to get into that some other time because we're talking about these pitfalls. So, Solomon discouraged the practice. Now, one of the things a little bit different from our time versus his time was when Solomon discouraged this practice. If you were in debt to someone or you guaranteed a stranger's debt, even if I guaranteed a stranger's debt and that person didn't pay the debt, then everything I had could be sold, even myself. I could be put into slavery because of that. Now, we don't usually go that far today, but it's still, the point is there. Now, look what he says. If you have done this, if you have guaranteed, it is not a good idea, don't do it, but here's some things you need to do. If you've trapped yourself by agreement and you are caught by what you said, okay, again, he is looking at this and he's considering it. What will happen? And this is what happened. You can get trapped by it. You can be ensnared by it. Follow my advice and save yourself. For you have placed yourself at your friend's mercy. Now swallow your pride and beg to have your name erased. In other words, you humbly go to that person and say, I love you, I support you, but I made a mistake because me agreeing to do this has enslaved me. It's bound me. There's something else I want to do. I can't do it because of that. I can't do this because I've extended myself too far. Can you somehow let me out of this agreement? And he's saying, be humble about it. It's okay. Talk to the person. Share with that person what's going on. And approach them in that way. Okay? It's one of my commentaries says this. It says this. It means to humble in the word that we come and talk about. It means to trample upon or tread upon, to prostrate yourself. You admit your careless mistakes and humbly beg your friend or your creditor's kindness and grace. Now, some of us, that's hard to do, right? It's hard to admit mistakes. It's hard to go to people and ask. They said, you find yourself in a situation, ask for this to be done. Several years ago, I had a friend, about 6 years ago, needed some money. And needed some money because they were able to pay their bills, they were able to pay their rent, but they had no food money for the whole rest of the month. And this friend asked me, can he borrow some money? And I said, yeah. So I gave him a small amount of money, asked him how much he needed, and I gave him that much money. And he said, well, I'll pay you back as soon as my work picks up and I can have more money. So next month went by, his work hadn't picked up. Next month went by, his work hadn't picked up. And he came back to me, and he kept assuring me that he was going to repay me. Now, here's what happened. I had to actually read. You remember I told you I used to read Proverbs, one proverb a day, whatever day it was. That's the proverb I'd read. So apparently on that 1 month, on the 6th, I read Proverbs. And he came to me again and said, hey, I'm still going to pay you back. I'm still a little bit short this month. He said, I got a little bit extra, but but next month everything should be good. And I just looked at him and said, hey, I don't want to be entangled by this. I don't want to be ensnared by this. I didn't say these words. But my thoughts were, I don't want to be entangled by this. I don't want to be ensnared. I don't want you to feel like you're ensnared by it or entangled by it. So tell you what, this money is a gift to you. I give it to you. And my friend said, but I want to pay you back. And I said, well, here's how you can pay me back. The next time you see somebody else in need, or next time the church presents a need to you or something like that, you can just give that. And you don't have to tell me anything else. You're free from it. And you know what? For me, that was free. And for him, that was freeing. You go and you beg. Sometimes you may be the person who needs to tell another person your debts are forgiven. You don't need to be entangled by this. It is a gift to you as well. So it's not just one way. To me, it's both ways. Verse 4, I like what he says. Don't put it off. Do it when? Now. Don't rest until you do. Now, I found some things with Nancy. One of the things I found with Nancy, when Nancy asked me to do something, if I say, okay, yeah, I'll do that. If I don't get up and do it right now, then she probably has to ask me again later to do it again, and maybe again later, and then maybe again later, and then maybe again later. But I find that anything in life that if I do it right now, sometimes I read a message or an email, and if I don't respond to it right now, it'll be a couple days, oh, man, I forgot that, and I need to go do that. And I may even, mark it and have it on a list or something like that. But he's saying, hey, don't put this off. Don't think, well, I need to pray about it for a day, then I go do it. He says, go do it now. It's that important. Free yourself from these entanglements. Don't rest until you do. Okay? Save yourself like a gazelle escaping from a hunter, like a bird fleeing from a net. Look at that last verse. Again, don't rest until you do. Okay? There is urgency to this. If you're a gazelle, if you're a deer and you're an animal and you're running away from a hunter, are you going to use everything you have in your power to get away? Yes, you are. Okay? So he said, if you go to the person and you ask humbly and that doesn't work, then think about other ways you can get out of this particular debt. Another friend of mine, and you guys know these type of stories. You've seen these types of stories too. He went to university on loans. He got student loans. He got other kinds of loans and everything else. And he got out. He had an engineering degree. He had a very good job. But you know what he did? He took on a second job. He took on a part-time job because he felt like these loans were entangling him. So he worked a second job so he could get rid of that debt quickly and quicker. Another friend of mine, when we were in university, he actually went to work and he bought a house. And when he bought a house and he was working a good job and he was making good money and his wife was working and they had a child, but they still said, what's the most important thing? We want to pay off this house as soon as we can. So they always made double payments and sometimes triple payments on their house so they could pay it off faster to get out of debt. Do it now. Do what you need to do. Be like that gazelle. Be like that animal, like the bird fleeing from a net. Okay? You do everything you can to get away. Then the second pitfall is avoid laziness. Now, when we talk about avoid laziness, at first I kind of just like, well, okay, that's pretty simple. That's pretty easy, avoiding laziness. And then I woke up in the middle of the night last night, and I was thinking about this, and I was avoiding laziness, and I was like, I need to spend a little bit more time on this, a little bit more time than what I have put there. And so this morning I changed some, I don't know what I just did. I went the wrong direction. Here we go. Okay. I wrote down, I wrote down on my notes, and then I did a little bit of Google research, and I wrote down there are different kinds of laziness. I said there's physical, mental, and spiritual laziness. And then I Googled a few things, and actually one list came up with this existential laziness as well. And physical laziness, that's often what we think about in laziness, okay? Someone who won't do the work, won't get up and do the work. Mental laziness is people who just won't think about something, or won't try to think about something, won't try to work it out. Maybe there are people that are too lazy to read a book, so they watch the movie instead. There's nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time. Oftentimes I watch the movie, then go read the book, okay? But hey, we have so many ways to be lazy nowadays. And physical laziness, mental laziness, sometimes we think, oh, I've worked so hard all week long, I just need to rest. I don't need to work anymore. Sometimes we put off responsibilities because of our laziness. And we don't really think about it as being laziness because we work hard, but we still have those areas of laziness. Existential laziness, let me read this to you, because I never have thought about this. Okay? It says it manifests a lack of interest and enthusiasm for life in general. I thought, when I read that this morning, I thought, oh, this person. No, I didn't. I didn't make a list of people, but there were a couple of people that came to mind. And I've got some friends that they're just kind of there. When I was younger, I read a book by a guy named Howard Hendricks, and Howard Hendricks was talking about working with teenage boys. And he was talking about the difficulty of working with teenage boys, and he was talking about within a church. And he talked about how when he was a child, when he was a teenager, that he had a Sunday school teacher that worked with him all the time. And he said that in his Sunday school class, there were several boys his age. He said there were a group of them that they were doing things like, when the teacher wasn't looking, they'd climb out the window, and do stuff like that. And he said, and then there was some of the boys that in that boys' Sunday school class that just sat there and didn't really answer anything, didn't do anything. They were just there. And Howard Hendricks had a label for them. He called them bumps on the log. They were just bumps on the log. And he said, these other kids that were the kids climbing out the windows, he said, all those boys in that Sunday school class that were the climbing out the window kids, he said they were the ones that were willing to go out into the world and make a difference in the world. And he said it wasn't because they had the energy to climb out the window. It's because that Sunday school teacher had the energy to take them and mold them and shape them and teach them, mentor them into men that they should be. And the whole point is here is when we talk about this existential laziness, those people are the bumps on the logs. And that doesn't mean we should push them aside. What that means is if we see those people, we should help them. What that means is if we're one of those people, then we should seek some help. Say, hey, how can we care more about life? How can we care more about what's going on around us? And then there's spiritual laziness. Now, I do not like at all what they said about spiritual laziness, okay? But spiritual laziness is this. We've had a rough day. We're really tired. We go to bed at night. We think, God, I'm going to get up early in the morning and I'm going to read my Bible and pray. Next morning comes, we wake up and we think, oh, I'm still tired. If I sleep an extra 30 minutes, I feel much better. If I sleep an extra 10 minutes, I feel much better. God, I'm sorry, I slept a little bit late. I got to get to work now. I got to get my kids to school. I've got to get this thing happening. And to me, that's what spiritual laziness is. When we don't take the time to spend some time with God every day. Prayer, meditation, Bible reading. And we have no excuse for it. Even if we're really busy. Most of you got smartphones. Most of you can download the YouVersion app. Most of you can set up a reading plan. And if you use one of the more common scriptures, you can actually listen to it on audio. This is part of what I do. I spend an hour to hour and a half every day in the car, taking kids back and forth to school, doing different things. And part of what I do is after they get out of the car, I pop that thing on and I listen to scripture while I'm driving down the road. Don't read because that's, probably not the safest thing to do. But I listen at least. Now I do my other reading and other things. But we don't need to be spiritually lazy. There are all kinds of resources. That's one of the beautiful things about living in this time period. There's all kinds of resources for us. We just need to make a discipline to use them. Don't be spiritually lazy. All right, let's move on here a little bit, okay? There's another article said this, and I'll just read this to you. It said there's 8 voices of laziness, and I put this up there because I looked at some of these, and I was just like, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I've used that. Yeah, I've heard that. Okay, and what it says is that when these things actually point to us being lazy. So, confusion. Okay, I don't know what to do. And they say that's lazy because if you don't know what to do, then you need to go find out what to do. But sometimes we just sit there, I don't know what to do, and we don't do anything. Okay? And I'm guilty of that sometimes. I'm like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And I don't want to think about what to say. I don't want to think about what to do. But we just need to go do it. Neurotic fear, I just can't do it. It means, hey, you're afraid that maybe you've grown up all your life, people telling you can't do things, you can't do things. So you're afraid you can't do it. Okay? I know one of the things that I've talked with people about too is the idea of cooking. And the idea of cooking about, well, I can't cook, I don't know how to cook. And the fact is, if you take a little bit of time, read a recipe, follow that recipe, you can cook. And then what happens? You get better and better. Before long, you don't need a recipe. But you can start somewhere and learn how to do it. A fixed mindset, okay? I'm afraid that I'll fail or look stupid at this. And it's just the idea of self-image and self-awareness of who you are. Okay, a couple other things here. I can't pronounce that word for this morning, but you're lethargic. I can say it that way. I'm too tired. I don't have the energy. Okay, I just, I've been there. There's, sometimes at night, we're done eating, we're doing homework, we're doing everything else, and I look in the kitchen, and that sink's still full of dirty dishes, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm just too lazy. I'm just too tired. I don't want to do it. Nancy, can I wash dishes tomorrow? That type of thing. What about apathy? I just don't care. Never thought about that being laziness before, but it's a voice of laziness. Okay? A couple more things here. Regret. Okay? I'm starting to use this one. I think it's one of my favorite ones now. I'm too old to do that. Okay? My body has changed. I've changed. I can't do that anymore. It's just a lazy excuse. Okay? Identity. I'm just a lazy person. People say, I'm just a lazy person. I love it. Okay? That's a voice. And then shame. I shouldn't be so lazy. Now, some of these have some psychological ramifications to them. But I thought that these are all good things, good voices. And we hear those voices, we should think about what did Solomon say about laziness. He said this, take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. Learn from their ways and become wise. Okay? Well, how are the ants wise? Let's take a look. Though they have no prince or governor or ruler to make them work, they labor hard all summer, gathering food for the winter. They're self-starters. They're self-motivators. They work hard even when no one is looking. Okay? You watch ants. You see an ant in your house, and it's all by itself, and one thing you're afraid of is, oh, more ants are coming. That ant is out there working. No other ants see it working. The queen ant doesn't see it working. It's out there working hard on its own, doing what it can. It supports others around it too. It helps others. So it is. They are people who work hard, who are not afraid of hard work. Look at the next verse. But you lazy bones. Okay? Now, he gives a positive example of the ant, and then he says this, you lazy bones, how long will you sleep? When will you wake up? A little extra sleep, a little bit more slumber, a little bit folding of the hands to rest. And he say, hey, look out. If you don't work like the ant, if you're lazy, here's what's going to happen. Poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. Okay? Because you're gonna miss out on life. You're gonna miss out on the good things of life. And bad things are gonna overtake you. That's gonna take you back into these other things if you think about it. Being entrapped. Falling into different sin, different things. He said, but if you work hard, Keep your eyes on Christ. Work hard. Do as God wants. Good things will happen. Remember what Colossians 3:23 and 24 say? Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for who? For the Lord, not for man. And then verse 24 then tells us, remember that the Lord God will give you an inheritance in heaven. He's saying, hey, work hard, and these things won't happen to you, but good things will happen to you. So, our third one, avoiding scoundrels. Okay? And I looked up some different things about scoundrels, and I like this in this way. The reason I use scoundrel, actually I had another word to begin with, but the word scoundrel is someone who works to undermine social and personal relationships for their own benefit. And we know people like that, right? And so watch out for these people. He doesn't say, you need to avoid them, but avoiding them doesn't mean like you just don't talk to them, you're not friendly to them or anything else, but avoiding means be aware so you don't get caught into their trap. Those people need Jesus just like we need Jesus, okay? In the particular, it says, in particular, he or she attempts to corrupt the judicial system or subvert the government's authority. This is part of what this text implies. And I was like, okay, I like that. I like that idea of that's what a scoundrel is. So when you start thinking about it, okay, you start thinking about these people, these are the people that usually have an angle on things, okay? They have a reason. Some of you, sometimes we ask, well, what's your agenda? What's the hidden agenda here? And these are people that always have hidden agendas. Now, a lot of times we have a hidden agenda. Sometimes we don't share that with people. But they have a reason for doing things. They're trying to benefit themselves. And maybe they're not trying to benefit themselves, but maybe they see life as going good for you, and they're just trying to sidetrack you or derail you. They're trying to get you off the path somehow or some way. So we need to watch out for these people, okay? Sometimes they think they're above the law. Sometimes they mock justice. Sometimes they ask the question, why? Those type of things. And because they always tend to have a scoundrel, if you really get to talking to them, one of the things they'll do, they'll tend to think that the world is against them a little bit, okay? And so these type of people are people that can be pitfalls in your life. So how can we identify a scoundrel? Look what he says. What are worthless and wicked people like? Well, first of all, they're constant liars, okay? Never tell the truth. I went fishing today. I caught a fish this big. But actually, I will tell you I caught a fish this big. I had a friend that used to say, well, I caught a fish this big. And later, if you ask him, you say, you caught a fish this big? And he said, no, I went like this, okay? So they may try to deceive you. They're liars. They're not honest before you, okay? They can be slanderers. They can be gossips, those type of things too. They signal their deceit with a wink of an eye, with a nudge of the foot, or a winkle of the finger. In other words, Solomon said, hey, scoundrels sometimes have physical keys or physical tells that you can tell, okay? Will they look you directly in the eye when they talk to you? Or will they always look somewhere else? When you start asking them serious questions, will they try to divert you, try to redirect the conversation? Those type of things. That's what a scoundrel does. Their perverted hearts are plot evil. They don't have the best in mind for you or for anybody around you, for God or anything else. They constantly stir up trouble. Okay? We've all met scoundrels. Be careful of them. Watch them out. Some of you know my story. 7 years ago, I ran into a scoundrel, and I never thought about them being a scoundrel at the time. But when I thought about this week, I thought all this applies. And if I would have saw that at the beginning, maybe things would have played out differently. Not only for me, but maybe others around me as well in that situation. So watch out for them. Be careful. They will be destroyed suddenly, broken in an instant beyond all hope of healing. One of the things that we can take solace from, I don't want to say be happy about, but in that situation I said about 7 years ago, one of the things when I realized what was going on, one of the things that made me be able to forgive him was to say, God, he's in your hands. You deal with him as you want to deal with him. And I know if he continued on in that way, that eventually things would break for him. And never shared this with you guys, but a couple years ago, I got some inside information, and this person continued those ways. He did it with the wrong person, and he got fired immediately. His job, because it eventually caught up to him. If we put ourselves in that situation, if we become a scoundrel ourselves, or even we're around scoundrels, we can put ourselves in a situation where these things can happen to us too. Don't put yourself there. They'll be suddenly destroyed. They'll be broken, instant healing. So, our first 3 pitfalls. Avoid illegal entanglements. Don't put yourself in debt. Don't put yourself in places where you're illegally committed to something. Avoid laziness and avoid scandals. Now, next week, we'll go on with the rest of them. We'll go on with these things. Avoid what the Lord hates. And some of you know that list very well. It's in Proverbs 6. Avoid disobedience and avoid immorality. But before we quit, I want to give you a couple more things. This author, he's a Christian psychologist. Actually, he wrote this in one of his books, and I like what he says. Oh, that I had the opportunity to rethink many of my decisions. For the pitfalls into which I have so frequently fallen were often dug with the shovel of those very decisions. When Solomon's talking about avoiding these pitfalls, he's talking about the decisions that you and I make to put ourselves into those places, into those situations where we can easily fall into that pitfall. Romans 16:19 says this. For everyone knows that you're obedient to the Lord. This makes me very happy. Paul is giving him attaboy, okay? But then he says this. I want you to be wise in doing right and to stay innocent of any wrong. I want you to be wise in doing right. Watch out for the pitfalls. Avoid those pitfalls. Do what is right. And then this next verse, 1 Peter 5:8. Stay alert. How do we avoid pitfalls? We stay alert. Watch out for your great enemy, the devil. He prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. And I was out hiking with the boys, and we weren't hiking when I did this. We were walking down the street when we did this. And I asked the kids as we're walking down the street, hey, did you guys know who's behind you? Oh, they don't know who's behind you. I said, well, just turn around and take a look every once in a while. Look and see who's behind you. When you're walking down this, I said, especially if you're out in your hiking, you're in the mountains, stop and take a look and see where you came from and see what it looks like, because sometimes it can look different. Be aware of your surroundings. When you're crossing the street, not only look for the cars coming right and left, but look and see if there's any cars coming from the side streets or motorcycles or whatever else. Be alert to our surroundings. Now, if you're doing that in Taiwan, you got to be really alert, right? But you must be alert. Because if you're not alert and you don't see these happening, you can easily fall into the pitfalls. So be alert. Our enemy, those of us who are believers, Satan is against us. He doesn't give up on us when we accept Christ. He's not happy about that. But he's out to destroy us even after that, because he doesn't want us to share the love and grace that we have to other people. So he's still out there trying to attack us, trying to bring us down. This church, long before I came here, has a history of a pastor who did something he shouldn't have done, and it was a big pitfall. It caused the church to go from my understanding, like I said, before my time, that they had about 700 to 800 people regularly attending, down to about 200 to 250 people. Then it started building back up. Big pitfalls can have big consequences. Be aware. Be alert. prevent yourself from going there. Let's go to God in prayer. As we pray, or as I pray, think about possible pitfalls that you may be facing. Think about these things we talked today, but even anything else that God may share with you. And ask God to give you eyes to see. Ask God to help you to be alert so that you can avoid those pitfalls in your life. Father, we thank you for Solomon, for his wisdom. And Father, as we've looked at these three pitfalls today that could cause us problems in our lives, help us to avoid these things. Help us to be generous in the resources that we have, but not to get ourselves entangled in things that may entrap us or things that may enslave us. To keep us from doing the things that you would want us to do. Father, help us too in this idea of laziness. Father, help us to be diligent in our work. Help us to be diligent not only in physical work, but in our mental and our spiritual and our emotional work as well. That we will love you and who you are and seek you out at all times. When we see those traps happening around us, help us to avoid them. If we find ourselves in those traps, help us to get out of them in any way that we can, as long as it honors you and your kingdom. And Father, too, we live in a fallen world. And so there are many out there who don't have the best interests of ourselves, of you. But help us when we encounter those people to be alert and to see. Help us to show them love and grace so that they too may come to you and live their lives the way you want them. May they become believers. May they become part of your family. But Father, in all these situations, as I said before, if we find ourselves in them, give us the peace and comfort to know that right now we can turn things around. We can trust in you, follow you. Things will be well. In Christ's name we pray.